Hello, lovelies. Welcome to Horror 421, the podcast, with your host, your friendly small-town horror author, Charles Campbell. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the frights in this week's episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Horror 421, the podcast. I am your host, small town horror author Charles Campbell, and today I have a very special guest. She is one of four shining stars in the 2005 horror flick directed by Greg McLean. It was called Wolf. Well, it is called Wolf Creek, and I am so over the moon to have Cass Magrath with me today. Thank you for joining the show.
Oh, thank you, Charles. It's a real pleasure.
Well, we're going to talk about more than Wolf Creek, but we'll start off with Wolf Creek. But before that, if you could give my listening audience just a little background on yourself. You sent me an awesome bio, so you've done a lot more than just Wolf Creek. Leading up to Wolf Creek, you did work in television on Aussie screens all over the place. So give us a little background on yourself, and then we'll get into the conversation.
Yeah, sure. Well, as you just said, I have been an actress on film and TV, a lot of kids' shows growing up in the 90s. So there's a fair amount of people my age, like I'm 42 now, that know me from when they went home and turned on like the after school shows. And yeah, did some dramas, some theatre. I've done a lot of voiceovers. I've worked in casting. I'm now a budding writer and film producer and theatre director. So I've, like a lot of actors, I guess you've got to stay around, as well, just like diversify your skills and not wait for that phone to ring, sort of thing. So yeah.
Well, that's cool. I did more research on you since you agreed to come on the program, and a couple of cool little films I watched in the interim. And we'll get to Wolf Creek for sure, but Dust Walkers, I thought that was a pretty good movie, and Witches of Blackwood, but it was originally titled The Unlit. So I want to talk a little bit about that too as we get into our conversation. But those were two pretty cool films I enjoyed. Um, so before we start digging into Wolf Creek, what kind of drew you to the horror genre? I know you have a little comedy thing going on too, which I checked that out, but we'll get to that. But what drew you to the horror genre? What made you gravitate toward it, or was it something they pulled you into?
It's such a funny question, and I've talked about this with Kirsty Morassi, the other actress in Wolf Creek. I say Wolf Creek 1 because there's now like a franchise. And as Australian actors, we get asked this a lot, and it comes from America. So the American acting culture is so different from the Australian acting culture. In America, like if my version of me over there would be like totally minted with cash. And I could be in a position where like I could pick scripts and be like, oh, I'm drawn to this character because, I'm feeling it, it relates to how I feel at the moment because blah, 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 blah. It's a very US thing, and Australian sort of reporters and journalists have picked up on that. And they ask us this question too: what drew you to the role? And if you're an Australian actor, there's nothing that draws you to a role. You are lucky to get an audition. It might be months in between, and who the fuck cares what it is? This is what we might be doing. So we're doing a horror. There's no like, oh, I'd love to do a horror, and then it just, magically happens. So what drew me to the role was the opportunity that I was one of very many that tested for that role, and I got it. All of the power was in their hands. I had no power over, whether they were going to pick me. I just tried my best, and luckily I got the role.
Well, Greg McLean did a great job with the story, and he did an awesome job directing the film. It was a great piece of filmmaking. And you did bring up Kirsty Morassi, but I also want to bring up the other actors. I said four shining stars, and there truly were. There were four shining stars in this movie. You, of course, Nathan Phillips, and the biggest baddie that has ever come out of Australia, John Jarrett. So
Yeah.
can you talk about how you guys meshed? And we'll get into the movie a little bit, but when you guys met and kind of interacted the first time, did you feel that it was a great connection from the jump, or was there some work to be done there?
Great question, and absolutely. So I had worked with Kirsty Marassi before. We had known each other since we were teenagers, sort of, through drama classes, and we were both working on television and stuff like that. So we already had a relationship, a working relationship and a friendship. Nathan Phillips I had not met. He was kind of big at the time, and I was very excited to meet him. John Jarrett, we knew from growing up and things. He was famous for not being in horror in Australia, and actually famous for being like a wholesome kind of like gardening sort of dad. So like that, immediately when I knew he'd been cast, I got that chill, and I was like, oh, because Australians are going to really react to him in that way. Different, I guess, if you're from another country and you hadn't seen him in anything, sweet and wholesome. So I knew that was going to work, and I knew that was a masterstroke. And when we started rehearsing and acting together, like all good actors, they make you better. And so you have that feeling of, oh, shit, I've got to be as good as everybody else. And so you're constantly, on your toes, and you're feeding off one another. And Nathan's such a natural actor. He's got a lot of energy naturally. Like I think I have to like kind of self-generate the energy that he just kind of has naturally. And Kirsty's so effortlessly cool, and she just has this way of, you just want to look at her. And John was, just acting his pants off, being this amazing character. So I was like, shit, I've got to match all of the energy around me. And if there'd been different people in those roles, then my performance wouldn't have been as good. No way. Like you really are as good as the people around you.
Yeah, I'm gonna say you more than held your own. You absolutely did. And the great thing about this movie, there was a lot of setup in the beginning to set up your guys' relationships, and to see where you were in your lives, and so it made the second half even harder to stomach. So it was pretty amazing the way it was set up. So I really appreciated it. Um, Now, going back to John a little bit, I did watch some of the behind the scenes stuff on the DVD, so you can pick this up somewhere. I don't remember where I got this copy. I've had it a long time, but it may be out on Blu-ray. I'm not sure, but watch the behind the scenes stuff on this. And one of the preparations that they referred to with John, he really got into his character. And is it true? I don't know if this is true. Is it true that he didn't like shower for a month or whatever it was?
I've been asked this question in every single interview, or now in the later years podcasts, without exception. I will get asked by someone, is it true that John didn't shower? And I always like to say, I feel like I've debunked a lot of these, but there's nuance here. There's nuance here. It's sort of true, and it's not true at the same time. Well, it is true and untrue at the same time. So was he one foot in his character the entire time? Absolutely. Yes. He made jokes as Mick Taylor. He was never John Jarrett in that friendly, warm kind of, way. Like John's like he's an actor that's been around for decades. He's done a lot of things, and there's, and he's no exception. They have a lot of great stories and anecdotes and things like that you sort of do on set to keep each other amused and in the right frame to keep performing and stuff. So he wasn't doing that because Mick Taylor doesn't have that kind of,
Right.
intellect and stuff. So he was always one foot in the character, yes. But at the same time, it is still a movie that's logistically, you've got to move locations and you've got to talk about, it's lunchtime and what are you having for lunch and things like that. So
Right.
there was also that going on. So it was a bit of both. I would say he did go away and he did some on his own, and I think it was near, sort of paraphrasing here a bit, I think it was near where like the bodies in the barrel were found, which I just realized you're American, you wouldn't recognize that story straight away. But bodies in the barrel is something that happened here. It was a bunch of people, I think, killing people for their like Centrelink benefits, their government benefits. Anyway, they put their bodies in barrels and they found the barrels and they were kind of degraded. Anyway, degrading in the barrels of acid or whatever. So John, I believe, went and stayed out near where those bodies were found to get into a zone and to get into character. And during that time, he wasn't showering. So, but when he was on set, and remember the film, our film went for weeks, and he wasn't staying there the whole time. We moved around. He wasn't on set smelling terrible or anything, and I had to work very close. He did kill me in the movie, and not once did I think, "Oh man, this guy stinks. He needs a shower." So yes, it's true, but it's also not as bad as it sounds. Is the long answer.
That's the long answer. Nice. Now I want to back up a little bit. When you first got the phone call, or however you received your message that you got the role and you were going to be in this film,
Yeah.
what's the first thing that popped into your mind? Were you like, "Oh shit, this is amazing," or were you scared, or was it a little bit of both? I'm just curious as what your reaction was when you knew that you got the part.
It was actually really frustrating because my agent at the time left me a message on my phone that said, "Oh, I've got a voicemail from the producers of Wolf Creek, and I think it says that you've got the role. I'm not sure. Anyway, have a good weekend." And I spent all weekend not knowing what that meant. Was it a yes or a no? All weekend. And like Monday morning, I was like, "Do I have the role or not?" And she was like, "Oh, hang on, let me just." Gee, I'm really like putting some like venom into this story. She's like, "Let me just
That's
check."
all right.
Got back. She's like, "Yeah, you've got the role." And I was like, "Oh my god!" But I was scared later when we started. I was like, "Oh gosh, I better be good." And um, and it seems silly now, but I got very thrown off by the fact that we weren't going to be wearing makeup. And that made me feel really insecure because I just hadn't thought that we were going to be doing a film with no makeup. Everybody wears makeup. Even if you're not wearing makeup, you've got to wear makeup to look like you're not wearing makeup. But we weren't even wearing
Right.
that. And I was so thrown by that. I was like, oh my gosh, I felt really insecure because it's a big part of kind of getting ready. And I think the makeup artist was amazing. Like, and just kind of, she said, "We'll make your face consistent, but you're not going to be wearing any makeup." And then you watch like John Jarrett and Nathan Phillips head to toe with big MAC, makeup brushes. In those days, they were like the sea sponge ones, and they were just completely covered head to toe in makeup. Both of them men, because they had to look tan. And then we had nothing. So when I got over that, because that was scary, I just, I didn't know how to generate a character, I guess, with just my face. But yeah, then I got over that, and then just did my best. So yeah.
Oh, you guys looked amazing. So no
Thanks.
makeup. You guys were awesome. You look really really good. So let's get into some of the scenes here. You talked a little bit about your kill, but you guys are having fun. You're living your lives. You're backpacking across Australia. You get this little beat up car. You get stuck at Wolf Creek. Um, First thing I wanted to ask about that I never got, and I've seen the movie quite a few times. What made the watches stop? I was always curious about that.
Such a great question. Yeah, and I can remember some stuff that Greg McLean had said about this. There was like a supernatural element to the crater, and it was just like, and I think there was a few other things that were supernatural in the storyline that kind of got cut out, but that sort of stayed in. But there is no real conclusion to why the watches stopped. There is I think there's a few nods to, like, how filmmakers like to put nods to other films,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and there's other films in Australia with the outback being this. I don't know if you've ever been out there, but we have the Nullarbor. We've got which is a place that you kind of drive across the middle of the country, and there's a lot of weird things that people say happen when you get into those real remote places. That's
Ooh.
kind of when you get your alien stories and your really weird things like that. So I think it's just like a general nod. There's also another film, an Australian film called Picnic and Hanging Rock, that is pseudo based off a real story, but it's actually not really that true. But about these girls that went missing on a rock at a place called Hanging Rock, and they were never found again. And it's like this. There's like a nod to our outback being its own character that kills you and doesn't care, steals. It has its own rules, its own universe.
Yeah, yeah. Well, he did touch on that in the behind the scenes at the Outback being another character in the film.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and one note that I took, and you just kind of obliterated that with your commentary just now. I didn't feel any supernatural elements in the film, and to me, it was a killer. You
Right.
know, targets this
Mhm.
shit could happen. Be afraid. Which, in contrast to Witch is a Blackwood, that was very heavily supernatural oriented, if that makes
Yes.
sense.
Yes.
But yeah, okay. Well, you taught me something. So there was a supernatural element in.
Yeah, it is a nod.
Yeah,
And then their car doesn't start, but I think that goes back. We figure out that he has done that while, from the investigating my character did and found on the videotapes. But yeah, I think it's just that nod. Yeah, that's how I
right.
interpret that bit. It's
Okay.
just a nod to other films. It's a nod to the psychology that Australians
Right.
have about our own outback. That it is a scary place. It is. I've been there
Oh
multiple
yeah, yeah.
times. You don't want to stick around. For some reason, you just get that feeling of like, get out, go home where it's safe.
Well, one of the things I liked about Nathan's portrayal of his character is he had some pretty good comedic timing. So I mean, I know it wasn't a comedy, but he was funny.
It is funny. Yeah,
And when you guys pulled into Emu, is that how you say it? Emu Creek,
yeah,
the little the gas station and the restaurant? His interaction with those blokes in the corner that were trying to cause trouble, I thought that was a great scene. Tell me what it was like filming that part of the film in that location.
yeah. That scene was one of the few scenes that we sort of had with other people. There was always us. It felt like we were always in the car, and then there was that. I mostly remember from that scene the actor whose name escapes me. I can't believe it. Who was the big guy at the bar, and he was talking about his children, and they were good actors, and both of them became very successful actors. And his son, whose name also escapes me, this is a shit story, sorry, is a huge Hollywood star now. Brody McPhee, Andy
The
McPhee is the guy's.
Andy McPhee. Yeah, yeah, I'm looking it up. You see my eyes going on another
Yeah,
screen.
thank
Andy
you.
McPhee. Yep.
That I remember him mostly from that scene, and then his son now, Cody, not Brody, Cody McPhee, is a really big actor, and his daughter was also, I think her name is Shona, was also on Neighbours here for a while and stuff. So I remember talking to him about his kids and how and I remember thinking, because a lot of people tell me how good their kids are at acting and stuff, but I remember like thinking this guy's not mucking around, like this is
Uh,
real. I remember thinking that. But yeah, that's apart from that, I actually can't remember much else of filming that.
well, it did come out in 2005. I'm asking you to remember things like it was yesterday. So you said you were 42. I'm 55. So got a
Yeah,
little bit on you.
we're over the hill
But
now.
no, no, I wish I were 42 again.
Oh, that's
That's the thing.
it's all about perspective. That's true.
That's right. The more you age, my dad's 80. He wishes he was 55. So there you
That's
go.
right. Yes.
So after we leave Emu Creek and we get to Wolf Creek.
Mm,
Um, well, even before that, all the setup in this thing is amazing. So when later on when you find all the video cameras and all that stuff to see the footage, this guy's following you guys. He's
yeah.
following you. He's tracking you the entire time. Um, so the transition once you get to Wolf Creek and you guys are rescued
Mm,
by Mick, that long car ride where he's towing you to his lair. Tell me what that was like between you guys sitting in that car, thinking your character's thinking about what's going on. You know, Ben's kind of the mindset we'll get there when we get there, and but you two seem to be getting a little worried the longer it's taking to arrive at the destination. So, what was that like filming that?
yeah, it's so funny you talk about time because I think about things like that scene, and it really doesn't feel 20 years ago. It really, I can recollect those memories and exactly how I felt in that car with all of them quite easily. And that scene, precisely, it's interesting you mentioned that scene because nobody else ever has, is the transitioning scene really of the whole film. And that timing, it's the different, like a lot of younger people don't find Wolf Creek scary. And so I've referred to it sometimes as like an adult horror film because it is a very
Yeah,
grown up sort of thing to be afraid of. And that scene is really that beat down of like, we are so vulnerable, literally being dragged along. We have no idea where we're going. All of our trust is in this guy. We are being led to our not only deaths, but torturous deaths. And that feeling in that car, like, something's wrong, but there's nothing you can really say because nothing's also wrong at the same time. It's just a feeling. And I think naturally we all started to speak kind of quietly in the car, and that really told that story that we were nervous, but we didn't know what we were afraid of, and nobody wanted to be. I think this guy's going to kill us because you don't have that thought. That thought's not there, but something doesn't feel right, and it's the kind of nature of the film. It's really like very art house, and as you said, it is very well directed and it's very well structured and beautifully made. And that is really the timing of all that is really like a nightmare because it's not a short part of the film. It's kind of it's not a quick scene. It's a mood.
No.
And then it kind of picks up after that again as well, like around the campfire. It's like it actually
Yeah,
goes
yeah.
again, and then it just free falls into black.
Into darkness. Yeah, well, you mentioned the campfire. That's the next thing I was going to bring up in the progression of the film. You guys were sitting around the campfire, having a good time. Well, I think you were having a good time. I'm not sure. I think your character still had your guard up. Something was off, is the way I read it. Just looking at the expressions you had. Um, Ben, not so much. He didn't seem to be worried about too much, and but Christy, I couldn't get a really good read on how she was feeling, but um, just watching your character's face, um, and even after you guys were chatting for a bit, and you're kind of walking up to see what Mick's up to with the car, trying to give him a gentle nudge to hurry up, but not sound like you're pushing him. Uh, am I accurate in that assessment? Because that's kind of what I took away when I saw that.
100%, and it wasn't really kind of solidified. Very accurate. All of that until we actually kind of filmed that scene. Like, yeah, it was always a line that I kind of went, we'd like to get away as soon as possible if we can. But me kind of settling into like starting to get some like vibe, it's that was born out of Kesty and Nathan riffing so hard with their laughing because I just didn't get swept up in that. So I was like, shit, I've got to do something. So I chose that and went in that direction. So it was it kind of just settled in as we got to that campfire because I think originally it was sort of not really there that Liz was getting, because you don't want to give it away too early, but it was just super subtle. It was just like, I don't like this guy. This feels just, again, I can't, just women's instinct, can't put your finger on it, but you just want to get out of there.
Well, watching it, and I can't remember the first time I watched it. I've seen it quite a few times since the first time I watched it. But when Nathan's character Ben, and I can't remember exactly what he said that made Mick's eyes kind of change. But there was something in there, some dialogue that Ben said that kind of rubbed Mick the wrong way. I don't know if you remember specifically what that was.
I do.
I'll have to.
I think he says,
well,
I could tell you, but I'd have to kill you. Something, this is a knife, that's not a knife, which is obviously a reference to crocodile. But I know that death stare you're giving where, like, John just looks like an absolute psychopath. And the character is. Yeah, but how... Yeah, I can't remember Ben. I know at the moment you mean, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Liz goes like, what the fuck was that? That was weird.
And someone lightened the mood, but you could see right then in that scene, if this was the first time you're watching a horror movie, okay, this guy's not who he appears to be. 1,000% sure. You were thinking that maybe, but then when that kind of light flicked in his eyes, that kind of gave it away a little bit, and that's to John's credit. How he can do that. That's crazy to me. So you guys are lying down. You're drinking his spiked water.
Water from
and then you're waking up and you're bound with zip ties, I think it was.
Which you really can't get out of, by the way. Not that I should. promote that. But yeah, you really can't get out of those.
Well, just as a human being, some of the shit you and Kesty went through in filming, even though it's a film, and even though you guys are all friends, and you're laughing
Right.
when you say cut, that shit had to be scary as hell filming that. So, kind of take me through that. You're waking up and you're like, "What the fuck just happened?" Kind of walk me through your emotion and how you got into that space to be a captive trying to get the fuck out of there.
Yes. What goes without saying, and I don't think this is a strictly female thing, but that is a girl's worst nightmare, to wake up either there on the boot of a car or wherever with your hands tied. There's nothing, there's nothing, the future is not looking good, right? So tapping into that universal, I'm not a method actor, I should say, tapping into this collective consciousness of human beings and trying to tap into the fear of that is more helpful to me than thinking about the actual people that this has happened to, because then I just get upset sort of as me, and I'm not able to act the bit before that, which is the adrenaline and the fear and the survival instincts and stuff like that. So I do remember in that little shed. Oh, I also helped with continuity because yes. So I got out of that shed and I think I closed the window behind me. And when we were filming another scene, when I ran past it, the window was open. And I said to the producer and the director, I'm pretty sure I shut that window when I came out. And then they went and checked and they did. And so they shut it. So that was me. So otherwise I would have run past and they'd be like, hey, the window. So anyway.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the only thing that I helped. I actually ruined continuity in another part of the film. So yeah, swings and roundabouts. I remember in that scene, it was kind of, I think, like the first time I'd been filming on my own without other actors. And I remember, for some reason, I went back to how I felt about the script when I first read it. Because at that stage, you get quite confused when you're filming about where you are in the storyline sometimes or how it feels. And I had to go back to when I first read the script and how I felt about this scene, because I had to remember that the audience, this is the first time we're moving into shit's going bad. And I used that very much to help me guide emotionally where I was and where I should be at that point in the film. Because, you do film slightly out of order and,
Yeah.
and a lot of hyperventilating with breathing to keep up. You get quite dizzy, and it's to do that because it's all about, breath and fear.
The role looked, it definitely looked physically taxing. And I remember the first time I saw it, I was rooting for you so hard because I love Final Girls. I love Final Girls who make it. And I was like, my favorite Final Girl is Amy Steele from Friday the 13th Part 2. Shout out to Amy. I got to meet her a couple months ago. So, I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. Go check it out. She's amazing in it. But I have an affinity for Final Girls, and it crushed my soul when you weren't a Final Girl. It crushed my soul. But you were a hero. Your character was a hero. She was a brave and courageous, and she fought the good fight. So once you escaped from that shed, you had a choice to make. Your character had a choice to make. You could get the hell out of there and try to find help or whatever, or you could fight, and you chose to fight. So tell me, walk me through that mindset. And Greg, I want to talk about Greg too. I know I'm rambling a little bit, but talk about the mindset you had to get into in that fight or flight mode. What made your character buckle down and say, "Look, we're going to get the fuck out of here. I'm going to get my girl, and we're going to get out of here."
Yeah, well, because it is a tragedy, isn't it?
It is
so close, and we were outside, and I inherently feel safer outside than inside. So going back to get the car, I guess, is a bit of a hard sell in some ways, but not if you can understand the isolation of how far away from anything we were. I
Right.
think it's shown in the film, like
Yeah.
where and also you sort of see Nathan at a later part going through the desert, just in the middle of nowhere.
Oh, yeah.
So, look, to be honest, would we have survived without a car walking around in the desert? Probably not. That would have been an instant death, maybe freezing to death, or at least, not having water for a few days, walking in the wrong direction. We would have probably both ended up dead. So to go back to get the car, I feel like, that's believable, even though it's hard to understand maybe kind of, but yeah. Because who's like, why go back? Fucking hell. And why have a look at the video cameras? That was hard. That was tough. But I felt a bit of a cringe about that until American audiences saw it, and so many Americans told me that was their favourite bit. And I was like, oh, that was the only bit I thought was hard to believe. I thought, I may go back to get a car.
Well,
yeah, you go.
Well, when when you say that, we jumped ahead a little bit. You saved you saved Christy.
Yes.
And you shot the dude, man. You shot the dude, and you were gonna shoot him again, but you couldn't figure out the damn gun. So I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. But yeah, after you go through all that and you go back to get the car, I remember the first time I watched it, I was screaming at your character, "Put that shit down! Get the keys and get the fuck out of there!"
There's things like that you have to tell yourself it is a movie at the end of the
Yeah,
day.
right, exactly.
And you've got to just suspend belief. But I always found that I was uncomfortable watching that. I was like, this is just there's always something in a horror movie, isn't there? I'm like, this is it. And it's my character. Damn it. But then I couldn't believe how many American audience members loved that bit. They were like, that is the scariest bit when you realize
it is scary.
Following you and stuff. So then I was like, I warmed up to that bit. I was like, okay. Well,
Yeah.
if the horror fans like it and that, then it's fine by me. But to answer your original question, sorry.
You're good.
Ping-ponging
This is fun.
But so the psychology of the kill scene and Greg, I think, was the question. Was that the question?
Yes.
The original question around?
That's part. It's part of it. Yep.
Yeah. So we walked through in rehearsals the whole film and each moment, and we did discuss this. Greg was clever. He didn't want to over-rehearse things, and he had, there was a lot of relaxation around sort of exact lines and things like that when we were filming. So we were able to find these beautiful little moments because the structure of the film was very sound, and he was very aware of where we were in each part of the movie, the setups and the payoffs and all of that. So he knew the areas in which we could, kind of make things up and the areas in which we could not. He was very clear about that. So when we got to the kill scene, all we had done was talk about it. We hadn't rehearsed it. We just talked about it. Greg and I and John, I think, and then individually, I'm pretty sure. And I just wanted to know the actual physical nature, because I had imagined it a little bit differently in my head about the physical nature of it was just the action part of the scene. And so we clarified that, and I was like, oh, okay. So I understood sort of how he was going to hold me and stab me in the back, what my body was doing, and where he was going to throw me, and what angle I was going to be lying down, and just things like that I really needed to know. And by the time we got to the scene, there was a lot of people there. Felt like more people than usual. There was a lot of people, I think, from the location that we were filming at, this shed. The people that owned the shed, or the people, there was lots of they came down to watch. I remember there was a group of people, and I was like, I don't know who they are. And they were owners of the property or whatever. And I think they were expecting a fun sort of whole vibe. And they were when I started screaming and, he was like, you fucking bitch, and shaking my body and stuff. They were just like, whoa, what are you guys doing? Because before that, we're like, yeah, we're making a movie.
Rainbows, lollipops.
Yeah, it felt pretty dark in there, but like that's but in deep down, we were all, of course, loving it. By that stage, we were a well-oiled machine. They'd filmed, stuff with Kesty and her in the shed after being raped and stuff. So, like, we all, it wasn't unusual for us to be in that space. But I think for outsiders to come in, it really highlighted this
Right.
film is kind of dark. Like, it was a good barometer. And they were not enjoying themselves. They actually left. They didn't stick around to watch too much more of it. I think they were like, whoa, this what the fucked up film they're making in our shed. Um, but, John really helped me get into the character. I wasn't feeling very scared, which is hard when you're making a horror film and your character's terrified and you're like, wow, I'm in a pretty good mood. This is what do I do about this? And I was just having a little bit of, we were filming a bit and I kind of, I don't know, I just wasn't reaching the levels of acting that I should. And John very kindly told me a story about when he was the most afraid in his life. And it was a really good story about, he was much younger and he was woken up in the middle of the night. Someone had broken into his house and he went
Oh no.
downstairs and he was like ready to be a man and get rid of this person. And he heard a voice in the dark say, I've got a knife. And he said he went to absolute jelly. Like his whole body started to, and he was really, and as he was describing that, especially a man being afraid will make a woman afraid,
Oh yeah.
giving me, as an actor, this is John Jarrett, the actor, not Mick Taylor.
Right.
To be clear. And I really picked up on that energy and it was really helpful and I went, great. And then I found that collective consciousness that I was talking about before of being absolutely terrified. And then from there, I was able to sort of do the rest of the scene convincingly. And I felt, and as I found that place, I was so happy internally. I was like, oh, thank God. And people say, oh, you looked so upset during that scene and so acting so weird because internally I was so happy that I made it to that place.
Oh, geez, you were amazing. I mean, you're amazing in the entire film, but that scene in particular, uh, it. Like I said, I wanted you to be the final girl the first time I watched it, and then he crushed that. He crushed that, and the way he killed you was just devastating. Watching it, and you did such a fantastic job. And what did he say? Head on a stick. I'm like, oh my god, dude, really? That was pretty intense.
Yeah, it's horrible. And it's, like psychopaths are just crazy, aren't they? Like, and that's what's scary. Like if you have any compassion or empathy for human beings, Wolf Creek is a very hard film to watch.
Oh yeah, for
It
sure,
really
for
is,
sure.
just on a base level, you're a young girl, early 20s, big, strong, grown, psychopathic man just completely destroying her life right in front of your eyes. It's hard. It's a tough one.
Well, see, my wife and I, we've been married for 35 years, 36
That's
coming up.
you. That is,
We got married super young,
yeah.
and as far as entertainment goes, we're polar opposites. She does not like horror movies. She does not like horror books, and she married a guy that writes horror books and loves horror movies. So she would never watch that movie.
Well, it doesn't
She
have
would
to,
never watch it.
because I don't like horror movies either, but there are some movies that have horror elements,
Oh
that are,
yeah.
like I think Wolf Creek, Silence of the Lambs. There are certain films
Oh
that
yeah.
are worth it but I do not like horror films in the way that people love them like you do, like that fun,
Right.
scary, the kills
Right.
or the, it's good that there's people out there that really appreciate them because it is an art form and a skill of its own, as you know. But yeah, it is weird. I'm just too kind of, I don't know, I get too upset and I don't
Yeah.
like jump scares. And if it's for nothing, then I just get really annoyed. Like the Ring, like ruined my life. It just ruined my life for like, and I'm like, for what?
Well,
What did
my
I
son
learn?
my son is 22 now, and when he was a kid, I don't know, he's probably 10 or 11. Um, let him watch a movie I probably shouldn't have let him watch, but if I don't know if you've ever seen the film Jeepers Creepers. If you
Absolutely not.
haven't,
No.
yeah. Well, anyway, it's kind of a monster movie, and these two kids they pull up to where the monster lives. And there's this big, huge tunnel that goes into the ground, and the sister is holding her brother by his ankles so he can try to see what's down in the tunnel.
Oh,
It's at an
sorry.
angle. So my son looks at it, and he's looking at me, and he says, "Dad, this is stupid. I'm not watching this." And he walks out like you. I mean, he's like aggravated. Why would someone do that? And of course, she drops him and he falls down, but I digress.
What happens to him when he's down there?
He gets out. He gets out, but you have to you have to watch the movie. It's a pretty good horror movie.
Anything like that, like anything that's just obviously for frights, the only time I've kind of understood that level of sort of film is I saw I was at a French film festival because Wolf Creek was in this
Mhm.
festival. I can't pronounce it very well. I think it's called the Gérardmer or something film festival. Anyway, it's a horror film festival. And there was Hostel was playing at the same film
Oh
festival.
yeah.
And I went to a screening of that, not against my
That's,
will, but I didn't really want to go for good reason.
yeah. It's pretty
And
brutal.
it is not that I can't watch movies like that. Like, do you know? There's
Right.
no way. And I sat in
Right.
that audience, and though for the first time in my life, I say I got it, but it didn't kick me off in my horror film career. But the cheering and the was it was like they were on a ride, and I was like, so they find this fun. They loved it. And when I don't know if you remember that film, but there's a
Oh, I
part.
do.
Yeah, she's this guy is like blow torching another guy's face, and it sort of
Yeah.
stayed with me for about 15 years afterwards. There's a lot of things in that film that just got to the core, made me feel sick. And it was a girl's face, that's right. And she ends up sort of running away with this half like blown off face, and then she
Yeah.
gets hit by a train or something like that. But anyway, her death was cheered. Like they were just like, ah! Like I was high fiving, and I'm like, I kind of get it with them, like real horror people that obviously don't get scared or feel sick. I sort of was like, and they were nice people. I was like,
Oh
okay,
yeah.
there's something here that I haven't quite got. And yeah, they're just, I don't know, you just like something tough about people that can appreciate that. I don't know, it makes me feel very upset. I'm like, I know it's fake, but it's still
Oh
upsetting.
yeah. Oh yeah. Well, I would not recommend you watch any of the Terrifier films. I have Art the Clown behind me. If you've never heard of
Oh,
Art the Clown,
Art the
yeah.
Clown,
Well,
are you kidding me?
Art the Clown, yeah. You don't want to mess with him. He's a pretty bad
Kind of
dude.
want to watch that though. That if it's sort of old, I can do it. Like if it's from
Okay.
the 80s, I could give it a go for sure.
Okay. Well,
Watch Art
yeah.
the Clown.
Yeah. Terrifier. It's called Terrifier, but it was from 2016, and they've made a second one that came out last
Oh
year, and
shit.
they have a. Yeah. I don't know. You may hate me after you watch those. Um, but I digress again. Before we get off your kill scene, one of the scariest parts of it was when you got in the car and you heard that. I can't do the laugh, but yeah, how was that? Did they tell you he was going to do that laugh, or did he just do it and kind of surprise you with it?
Yeah, I think it was in the script. I think
Okay.
um again, just sort of like technical stuff, like the knife coming through the chair, and I was a bit worried that like, how long is this knife? Is it
Yeah.
go all the way through the chair? And there was this is kind of funny. The executive producer Matt Hearn, who is also a friend of mine and has been since we filmed, so a long time, but he I'm trying to find the keys to turn it on, and he was like, "Oh, take the real key off her, so she doesn't have the key to turn, because that'll like help her, like act out the scene." But it didn't. So it turned my technical brain on. Actors are funny creatures, like because you're used to doing something over and over again. So all I was doing was starting my performance again from the start in the same take,
Oh.
going through the keys again. I couldn't find it, so I'd start my performance again from the start. It was like it didn't have like, and then eventually I was like, guys, is there like the right key? And they're like, that didn't work.
Nice.
Yeah,
They're just messing with you. They're
yeah. It's
just
like just
messing with you.
trust me. I'll act it out.
So after your character is killed, then we see, move on to Christie's struggle. So um, Were you around for those parts when they filmed those scenes? I don't know how that works with you guys interacting as actors, but do you stick around and kind of watch what she's doing? And I know you don't film in order, so I'm not sure when they filmed her stuff when she got killed and the old man picked her up and all that stuff. But kind of talk to me about that. How did that look from your perspective, not being in those scenes?
Mm. Well, no, I wasn't there for a lot of all that
Okay,
shooting. I just wasn't scheduled that day, so
okay,
and they were always filming far away from. Kessie and I were living together
gotcha,
in
gotcha, gotcha.
a little house, so and I think she got up, you know, very early, and off she went. And I'd heard people saying she's fucking killing it, like they're filming, they're getting, they love what they're getting that day. That's when they flipped the car. That's
Yeah,
when there was the car chase sequence. So when I watched it, I really had no reference for her. Like I hadn't seen it, so I really got
right.
the impact of it. And I have said it is my favorite car chase sequence in any film ever, and I still
Yeah.
stand by that. I love that car chase sequence. It
It's
is
pretty fucking rad.
so
Yeah.
exciting. It matches everything in the film. It just, I love that whole section of the movie. It is wonderful, and I know she did an amazing job. She had bare feet. Poor
Yeah.
lass. This is her story, not mine, but I'm going to tell it anyway. From she was running through bare feet through, the fields and the road. So she had little cuts and things all over the bottom of her feet. And there was a nurse that was looking after us. There's always someone on set that helps. Like if you've got a headache, they'll bring you a Panadol or, bring you water and stuff like that. And she was like, we're gonna have to do something about the bottom of my feet. And the nurse sprayed something on her feet that just she shouldn't have. And it just stung like all of the pads of her feet, like excruciating pain. It's not funny, but so not only was she doing it rough out there with her poor bare feet, then she tried to get help for it anyway. So that just I remember that, and she told me that story is like, made it so much harder, running around. She ended up getting something on her, something to help her for her feet. But yeah.
Oh,
Apart
geez.
from that, I think it was magic. Nathan Phillips was out on the set that day. He's in the behind the scenes. He was like
Yep.
there, hanging out. And also, it also feels like if you're an actor and you're not filming in front of the camera, you feel like such a kind of turd in a swimming pool, like being on set. There's just no place for you to stand. You're not doing anything,
Oh,
helping. So Nathan was helping with the behind the scenes. But it's just weird. Like film sets are like that. When you're not needed, it's really weird to kind of just be hanging around.
well, you
Just
probably want some rest too. I'm sure I mean, like I said earlier, the role looked physically demanding. And from the behind the scenes, you definitely affirmed that. But before we get off of Wolf Creek and talk a little bit about a couple of the other films, now we won't dissect them the way we did this one. But tell me about some of the more physical challenges that you had in this film, and then we'll talk about Greg just a little bit before we get off the Wolf Creek subject.
Well, I think I really regret not taking a photo of my body after we finished filming, because it should have been in the making of. Without like pants and a t-shirt on, my body looked like someone had taken a baseball bat to me and just repeatedly hit me. I had
Wow.
bruises, like small kind of coin-sized bruises all over my legs, like
Oh,
shockingly all over my legs, all over my arms. I had handprint marks from John, like his fingers. I had
right.
uh, most of the bruises I got were from crawling down the hill, the cliff face.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. You
Yeah,
two
so
were
we had
stuck
harnesses
there trying
on.
to.
We kind of crawled down the cliff face. Now, can I just preface this by saying I don't remember any physical pain at all filming. Like none. Something between action and cut, you just can't feel anything. I don't know why.
You're
Um,
so focused.
yeah, and I remember just looking at these bruises, just like no one would believe this. They're just that I've had the time of my life. Like I really should have taken a photo. I don't know why I didn't. I should have just got like little shorts on and a little crop top on and just stood and, like have an after photo of like this was after filming.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot of bruises. A lot.
Now, I've mentioned Greg a couple times, and he just the evidence is the proof is in the pudding, as they say. The evidence is there when you watch the film of how well it was directed and shot. What was
Yes.
it like working with him? Generally speaking, you can go into any specifics you want, but overall, what was it like working with Greg?
He has always remained the best director that I've ever worked with. Said that it's been 20 years and I've worked with some amazing directors, but none have ever been like him in terms of he is so much fun, and that whole set was a real laugh. There was a lot of great people that were having a really great time, very talented, of course. He had he had that presence that was very commanding, but he was very relaxed and loose as well at the same time. So that kind of is the perfect combination, I think. And I remember him saying, 95% of directing is just casting and picking the right people around you. And he's like, I'm not even doing anything anymore. I'm just along for the ride because everything was poised and in alignment, for him because of all the work previous.
Yeah.
He is so funny and so larger than life and very warm, not a creepy, horror guy or anything. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah.
he and he's made other films that are not, it's not
Yeah,
just
yeah.
kind of genre. But yeah, and he was just wonderful. Like you really want to create the feeling of set and everything really trickles down from the top, and if you've got an egotistical director or an insecure one or one that doesn't know what they're doing or whatever,
Yeah.
it trickles down in so many different ways. But because he was none of those things, everybody felt fully free to do their job. And I feel like that was his gift to everybody. Well, apart from like giving us the job, he then gave you the job after that as well.
Right.
Like
Right.
he did it twice, he doesn't micromanage. I actually said to him, you're not really directing me. Like, and I was worried because I saw, you spending a lot of time talking to all the other actors, and I felt a bit like, okay, well, where's my fucking like attention? Where's my conversation about this and that? And like I approached him about it, and I was like, you're not talking to me like about. And he said, well, because you're always just a Yahoo away from where you're supposed to be. I don't need to.
Yeah.
So
Well, that's a big compliment.
yeah, it is a big compliment, but I wanted to be. Yeah, he actually gave me one piece of direction, and I was like, oh my god, okay, which was you're like a cat going in a bath. You don't want to go. That was it.
Okay. Well, you portrayed Liz amazingly. I mean, I felt for her. I wanted her to win. I was crushed when she didn't win, and then we had Big John coming out on top in the end, and then he just keeps doing what he does, which is what you do in a franchise. So I understand.
That's true. He rides off into the sunset, doesn't he?
Right?
Like,
Yeah, literally walks off into the sunset. Got his gun over his back, whatever.
yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, that was an amazing conversation about Wolf Creek. Thank you so much.
It's a
I
pleasure to have
do
it
want
with
to
someone who truly cares.
well, I do want to touch briefly on because you agreed to come on the podcast, so I went and watched some other things that you did, and I was really intrigued by The Witches of Blackwood. It was originally titled The Unlit. So, first
Mhm.
question I have is why'd they change the title? I like both titles, but The Unlit sounded kind of cool to me. Or do you know?
I have absolutely no idea. Yeah, it was called the Unlit, meaning like the witches that were never set on fire is ultimately what that means.
Ah,
Um,
nice.
yeah, so because in the spoiler alert to get rid of those kind of types of witches, you got to burn them.
Right.
And it was a story about witches that weren't burnt. So that I don't know. Yeah. But I don't know. They have conversations, don't they, up above about what's going to appeal,
Yeah,
all this sort of stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, who
Well,
knows?
this was directed by Kate Whitbread, and I believe she also did Dust Walkers, which I watched today. I found it on YouTube, actually. I enjoy both of these movies, but the contrast between something like The Witches of Blackwood, which is heavy supernatural. We're talking about witches here, and you come back to town, and like all the kids are gone, and I
Yeah.
think your father your character's father unexpectedly passed away in the woods under some weird circumstances. So I think I'm capturing all that. But it was very, very creepy. Did you enjoy making this film?
That was a very just Sandra Shabaris was the director of The Dust Walker, but
Okay, okay.
she was
Sorry.
one of the no, no, that's okay. She was one of the producers of The Unlit, now called The Witches of Blackwood, is it? And
Yeah,
Kate,
which is a
Kate
Blackwood.
Whitbread, which is how I ended up on that film because I did The Dust Walker with. Well, actually, did a film called The Green Door with Sandra Shabaris, which never got released, unfortunately, and then moved on. Did that film shortly afterwards. Anyway, what was the question? Sorry.
Well, I no, well, I was talking about the contrast between the two movies. One's supernatural, one isn't. And did you have fun making this film? Was it,
Yes, it was a bit of a tough one. I think. Yeah, there was. There was non-consecutive shooting days, which can be disruptive, and it does make it harder. So you kind of can be filming something that in a film that you haven't filmed for a few months, and there was a bit of that in that film, which did make it difficult. And often with independent films, uh, there is the script is not what you end up filming because of budget. So
right?
as my as someone said to me once, it's sort of like, there might be like a war scene or whatever, and then that gets cut, and then it's now we're just talking about what happened in the
Oh yeah,
war.
yeah,
It can be a bit of that, and there was a little bit of that in that film. Um, the supernatural thing is interesting because I feel like when I was younger, I found supernatural stuff the most scary films, like Poltergeist, and like that was a haunted house movie was like the scariest thing I could possibly imagine. And now I think The Ring and all of that that's sort of been done very well. And as you say, it's a very interesting film, and it's creepy and all the rest of it, and the film works. But I feel like now what I'm really afraid of is not supernatural stuff. Like I think what's scary to me now is like the dark web.
oh
Like
yeah,
that's
yeah,
that's the most frightening thing I can think of now is like real things that people are doing, you
oh
know.
yeah,
But I do, or like some of the research I did for that film, like got a bit dark. You know,
yeah.
uh, yeah. I don't even know what I'm saying,
No, no,
but
no. You're good.
there
You're
it
good.
is.
No, you're hitting the points. Yeah, I thought it was a very interesting film too, and I liked it. I thought it was good. I talked to a lot of low budget directors and actors from indie horror movies, and
You should get
I
Kate.
get
You should talk to the director.
okay, okay.
I'll
I
pass
can
on your
definitely
details. You can talk to her about it.
cool. I will definitely follow up. I love talking horror with all kinds of folks.
I think she's making
Uh,
another one called The Magpie, I think.
the Magpie, cool. Well, I want to touch on the Dustwalkers real quick, and then we'll start wrapping it up because I know you have a life and you won't be stuck talking to me for 2 hours. So we're almost to the hour point. But Dustwalkers, I watched it today and I enjoyed it, and I'm going to tell you what it put me in the mindset of. It put me in the mindset of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. I can't speak.
Yeah.
Uh, if you combine it with the movie Tremors, it was I don't know if you've ever seen Tremors, but it was the monster flick with the worm in the ground, but Invasion of the Body Snatchers for sure. I'm sure you've heard of that film,
Yeah.
but I liked your character in it. I mean, you weren't like the main character, but your role was awesome. I enjoyed your screen time. Um, Tell me a little bit about making that film. I thought it was a fun monster zombie kind of flick, and I had fun watching it.
Good. Yes. Well, I love an alien film. I love sci-fi. Funny fact about that film, I did not prepare to be American in that film at all. So I was cast in the film, offered the role, which was nice. I didn't have to audition. That's always great. And
Yep.
then the first day of filming, and I mean literally, I had done my first take in the car with the thing. I was in the car. I had a green screen. I was in a truck, and I was like, "Can anyone hear me? Hello, hello,
The
hello."
radio, yeah.
Yeah. And then the director, Sandra Shabaris, came to the window and just casually said, "Do you reckon you could do it in an American accent?" And I went, "What, like now?" She's like, "Yeah, just give it a go." And I was like, "Just make the whole character American." She's like, "Yeah." And I'm like, no preparation, no. And I was like, "Okay, but if it's terrible?" And she's like, "If it's terrible, we won't do it." And I was like, "Okay." So I did it again with an American accent, which I've never done in a film before. I've done like 2 scenes in theatre. Luckily, one with Larry Moss, who's a big American acting coach, with an American accent. It's not a muscle that I have trained very well.
Oh, well.
And luckily, we had a US crew member, and I said to him before the take, I said, "You got to be. If it sounds shit, you got to tell me, because I don't want to be the Australian with the terrible American accent in the movie." Or I was like, "Oh my God." And he was so like, "Well, and she was like, "Yeah, do you want to go with that?" And I was like, "Well, not if it's going to be a real ear drain." And I asked the crew member, can't remember where he was from, I said, "Can you just help me and listen to me? And if I get words wrong, can you tell me when I'm filming?" And he said, "Yes." So we just made that character American. Like after I started filming. Crazy. But I think it's okay. But I was very I
Oh,
tried
it was fine.
hard to, yeah. Because
Yeah, it
American,
was fine.
it's not just the accent with Americans, it's their the the music in the way that they speak.
Well, it's
'Cause,
their dialect. Yeah, well, I'm from the deep south, if you can't tell. So I have a southern, it's called a southern accent here. So anywhere in the southeast, you're going to hear people that sound like me. And it
yeah.
changes as you get, if you go north, if you go west, if you go, it just, our dialects are different. So I don't sound like a person that comes from New York. And I'm sure you probably talked to lots of people from all over the country in the United States. And I don't know how many you've talked to that sound like me, but most of the people that sound like me are from the deep south. So,
Is that
yep.
why Americans seem to accept Australian accents, Australian actors with American accents all the time? Like, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of Australian actors that have great American accents. But Australian people are like, not all of them. But Americans don't seem to notice. And is that because you have so many American accents that to you it doesn't stand? You're like, "Oh, it's just probably somewhere in America." Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Yeah,
Because
it does. It
yeah,
does.
we can't even stomach an American actor with an Australian accent unless it's perfect. We just can't accept it. You know what I mean? We
I don't
couldn't accept
yeah.
a bad Australian accent, but Americans accept them all the time. And I wonder, like, do they just? There's so many
We
different
just
American accents. They're like, "Oh, maybe this
that's
is part of America." I don't know.
that's part of it. I think we just don't sweat it.
Yeah, like I notice sometimes. But
It's like whatever.
I've always wanted to ask an American that question. You do. I can hear your deep South accent, but it's very soft to
Oh, well, good. Thank you. All
me.
right. Well, I'm going to be quiet for a couple minutes, and I'm going to let you promote anything you want to promote. If you have anything coming out, or want to tell people where they can follow you, or if you want to talk about anything else, I'm going to be quiet and let this be cast time. Promote anything you want. If you have links you want me to promote, I'll put them in the bottom of the section of the podcast so people can click on them.
Okay, now I hadn't thought about this. I actually have nothing to promote. I have no
Okay.
movies coming out. I have written a book with my sister, which is completely unrelated to anything we've
No. Share, please.
actually a self-help book about learning to be selfish when you have children so you don't get eaten alive by them and society.
Nice.
Um, So, I could promote that. It's called The Selfish Mama, and it's on Amazon, and you can buy it. It's a self-published book. But, right now I'm doing a lot of writing. So I'm working on my own script. I have a story that's in a screenplay form and a play form that I'm polishing, that it has elements of horror. And I am, working to produce films again. I've produced one film. I've even in talks with Cassandra, the other actress, of us working together on a film in the future. So things are, at those stages right now. There's nothing like on, which I hadn't thought of. So, but thank you for the opportunity. You can, of course, follow me on Instagram and watch, pictures of my dog if you want. If that appeals. By all means.
Well, I have a beagle. He's in here asleep right now, so I love him. His name's Miller.
Little Bambino.
But, Miller, he's an awesome dog. My son brought him to our house 2.5 years ago, and I was the dad that said, "We're not going to keep a dog." Blah blah blah. And I had him for 5 minutes. I said, "He's not going anywhere."
Yeah, so. That's it. The dad that didn't want it then does everything for.
Yeah, he's spoiled rotten. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am Charles Campbell, small town horror author. I do have a brand new book out. It's called Signature Cut Above. It's about a crazy hairstylist. She's a little bit nuts, and she's from the she's from the deep south, and you need to read it. It's pretty insane. But you can find this book and all of my other books at valleyboypublications.com. I do want to promote a writer that I am absolutely in love with. Not getting paid for this at all. I just love her work. Is Ruth Ware, One Perfect Couple. That's her latest book. It's an amazing story. It's about a reality show called One Perfect Couple, and the couples aren't so perfect. So check it out. It's by Ruth Ware. And that's all I got today. You can find all my links at valleyboypublications.com. I want to thank Cass one more time for coming on the show. Thank you, Cass.
Thank you, Charles. It's a pleasure. Thanks for reaching out.
Oh, I'm so happy that you came on. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Horror 421, the podcast. We'll catch you next time. Take care.
We hope you had a horrific time, lovelies. Thank you for tuning in to Horror 421, the podcast. Be sure to like us on YouTube and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.